The first thing she said to me was, "Your cucumbers are too small." Straight out of nowhere, no preamble, no warning. And let me tell you, I would have preferred it if she'd just slapped me across the face. At least that would have made more sense. But nope. That's the reason she gave for everything that happened next. I'll get to all that, but first, let me introduce myself. Name's Tyler. I'm 42 years old. No kids. One wife. Well, about to be none if you catch my drift. For the past 2 decades, I've been busting my tail, building a business from the ground up. It went from eating instant noodles every night to dining at fancy steakhouses, where the bill's enough to make most people choke. A software startup? That's my pride and joy. I'm not going to bore you with the technical stuff, but let's just say I created something that people couldn't live without. And they paid me more than they'd spend on their own therapist just to use it. But all this hard work came at a cost. Time, sleep, my hairline, basically everything but my sanity. But you do what you have to, right? For the longest time, I thought my marriage was something I could count on. It felt like the one part of my life that was solid, as reliable as the granite countertops I paid for in the dream house. The key word here is thought. I met Sophia when we were young and naive, back when money wasn't a priority and love was supposed to be everything. She was stunning back then, and she knew it. Hell, everyone knew it. Tall, blonde, legs that could make any man weak in the knees. I wasn't exactly a heartthrob, but I had ambition. I had drive. Back then, that seemed to be enough. We hit it off, fell in love, got married, and played house like we were supposed to. But let's be real here. People change. Or maybe they just become more of who they've always been. Sophia used to be different, or maybe I just fell for the illusion. I won't lie, I loved her fiercely. I loved the way she looked at me like I was the king of the world. I loved how she'd twirl her hair when I talked about my dreams. But somewhere along the way, that look faded, and I chose to ignore it. It was easier that way. Here's where things started to get interesting. See, when my company started making more money than I ever imagined, Sophia decided she didn't need to work anymore. At first, I supported it. After all, my paycheck was enough to cover both of us. Hell, for a few lifetimes, it seemed, she could do whatever she wanted, find herself, whatever. But what did she choose? Herself. And only herself. She turned into, well, there's no better word for it. High maintenance. We're talking full-day salon appointments, spa treatments that sounded like scientific experiments, and enough shopping bags to stock a boutique. She quit her job the moment my checks got bigger. Her career was now being beautiful. Keeping myself curvy is a full-time job, Brand, she'd say, looking at me like I was an idiot who didn't understand how exhausting it was to sit around and look good. And I'll admit, for a while, I bought into it. I thought that's just what you paid when you had a beautiful wife. It's like buying a sports car, right? You have to fuel it with premium gas. But over the years, I realized something. I wasn't living with a partner. I was living with a pet. A pet that had to be kept up, but unlike a pet, Sophia didn't bring joy. She brought a bill and an attitude to match. Don't get me wrong, she wasn't always cruel or mean, just indifferent. And that's worse, isn't it? I became nothing more than an ATM, and she'd swipe me whenever she wanted. You know how some people say, I never saw it coming? Well, I guess that's sort of true for me, but in hindsight, the signs were all there. I just didn't want to face them. Then came that conversation, the one about my cucumber. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was a Thursday night, and I had just come back from a week-long business trip. Exhausted, but relieved to be home. I was looking forward to kicking back with a beer and spending some time with my wife. She was sitting in the living room, looking like she just stepped off a magazine cover, wearing a silky robe that probably cost more than the car I drove in college. I thought it might be one of those rare nights where we'd actually connect, where I'd feel like a husband again instead of a walking credit card. But she said, we need to talk, in that cool, detached way of hers. And you know that's never a good way to start a conversation. My heart sank, but I played it off, joking, sure, as long as it doesn't involve redecorating the bathroom again. No, seriously, she insisted, her gaze cutting through me like a knife. Those eyes used to make me feel invincible, but now they made me feel about 2 inches tall. I've been thinking about something, and I want to be honest with you. I braced myself. Maybe she'd racked up another bill on some ridiculous handbag. Maybe she wanted another vacation with her friends. The usual stuff. But then she hit me with it. I think you should consider, enhancing your cucumber. It was like the ground had just disappeared beneath me. I just stared at her, my brain trying to catch up. I tried to laugh it off, thinking maybe she was joking, but the look on her face told me she wasn't. I mean, I've done some research, she continued, as casually as if she were talking about the weather. There are places that can help with that. Help me with what? I finally stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. We've been together for 15 years, Sophia. This was never an issue. She shrugged, like it was nothing. It's just that, well, I think it could make things better for both of us. Better for both of us, right? Like I was the one with the problem. I can't even begin to describe how that felt. To have the woman you thought you knew suggest that you, the guy who's been funding her lavish lifestyle, need to change something so personal. And for what? What made her think this was even necessary? Was she comparing me to someone else? I told her I'd think about it, but my mind was already racing. The anger was instant, explosive. But I buried it because, well, that's what we men do, right? We suck it up, stay logical, don't make a scene. But that night marked the beginning of the end. I knew then that something had changed. Or maybe, just maybe, this was something that had always been there, right under my nose the whole time. Sophia had crossed the line, and now I was determined to find out just how far down this rabbit hole really went. But trust me, when I did, there was going to be hell to pay. I know what you're probably thinking. After that conversation, I must have lost my mind, right? Started following Sophia around like some obsessive boyfriend, checking her phone behind her back, going through her things like a paranoid creep. Well, here's the deal. I'm not that guy. Never have been. Never will be. The way I see it, if you need to start snooping, then the relationship's already done. So no, I didn't stay up late, obsessing over every word she'd said or analyzing her every move. I'm not some insecure wreck. I'm the type of man who knows how to compartmentalize. Running a business will teach you that. You learn to deal with problems, shove them into the corner of your mind, and keep going. And I had a lot on my plate to be wasting time wondering if my wife was out there looking for a better option. But I wasn't stupid either. That night, as I lay next to her in bed, staring at the ceiling while she slept soundly, totally carefree in her perfect little world, I made a decision. If she thought there was something wrong with me, something to fix, then I had to find out what else was going on. And the only way to do that without tipping my hand was to act like everything was normal. So, the next day I made a phone call. Just one. To my old buddy Jake. We've known each other since college. Jake's always had a knack for seeing things differently. He's the kind of guy who was made for the shadows. So it made perfect sense when he started his own detective agency. Shadow Works Investigations. Cheesy name? Maybe. But Jake? He was damn good at what he did. Jake, I need a favor, I said. That was all it took. A few words and a quick catch-up, and he was in. I didn't even have to say much. I could hear the recognition in his voice when I mentioned Sophia. Tyler, are you asking me to follow your wife? He asked, surprised. Yeah, I replied, feeling that knot in my stomach start to tighten. I need to know where she's going, who she's seeing. All of it. That was it. Once I gave Jake the green light, things started moving fast. He had two of his best guys on it, tracking Sophia. Within hours, they were out there, blending in like ghosts, getting so close they could tell you what brand of gum she was chewing without her ever noticing. Meanwhile, I went back to my life. Or, at least I tried to. Business deals. Late nights at the office. The usual grind that kept me too busy to think about what might be going on behind my back. I didn't obsess over it. Hell, I didn't even want to think about it. Denial is a powerful thing, and so is distraction. And when I needed a break from all the chaos, I'd pour myself a drink. Maybe two, maybe three. Who's counting? I told myself it was just to take the edge off, to relax after a long day. Look, I'm not the type to get plastered, but a few extra shots of whiskey? They didn't hurt, right? At least that's what I told myself as I poured another glass. Every few days, Jake would check in with updates. And every time, it was the same thing. Nothing yet, Brad. She went to the salon, did some shopping, had lunch with friends. No red flags, man. If she's stepping out, she's hiding it well. And for a while, I started to believe it. Maybe I had overreacted. Maybe Sophia's comment about my cucumber was just some misguided attempt to, I don't know, spice things up, bring us closer together. Hell, I couldn't figure it out. But at one point, I was almost ready to tell Jake to stop the investigation, save myself the money, save my sanity, and just chalk it up to a weird moment in our marriage. Then came the call, the one that changed everything. It was a Wednesday, a regular day. I was in the middle of a meeting with a potential client, pitching a $500,000 deal. My phone buzzed, and normally I would have ignored it. But something made me pick it up, and the second I saw Jake's name on the screen, I knew this wasn't just another routine check-in. "We need to talk," he said, his voice unusually tense. For Jake, a guy who's normally as cool as a cucumber, this wasn't good. "Can you talk?" "Not really," I said, glancing at the client who was droning on about budget projections. "What's going on?" "Sophia's not exactly where she said she'd be today," he said carefully. "She told you she was meeting Maya for lunch, right?" "Yes," I said, already feeling the blood rush to my head. "Well, she wasn't with Maya. She met up with a guy instead. Not just any guy either. Let's just say it didn't look like a business meeting." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "They were at a hotel," he added, and that one word, hotel, stung harder than anything else. It was like a bullet straight to my chest. Everything around me went red, and my heart started pounding like it was going to burst. I could barely speak. "Are you sure?" I could barely manage, my voice barely a whisper. "Yeah, Brad, I'm sure. Got pictures. Got video. You know I wouldn't call you if I didn't have proof." "Proof?" "Pictures. Video. Evidence that my wife, the woman I'd spent 15 years of my life with, was with another man. And not just with him, but probably doing more than I could ever imagine while I sat in a meeting, surrounded by strangers who had no idea that my whole world was crashing down in real time. I don't remember much of what happened next. I think I wrapped up the meeting, or at least made an excuse to leave. I think I told Jake to send me everything, pictures, video, the works, so I could see it all laid out. And then I sat in my office, alone, staring at my shaking hands, trembling with an anger I'd never known before. The silence was the worst part. No noise, no movement. Just me, stuck with the crushing realization that this wasn't some weird misunderstanding or an offhand comment. This was a full-on betrayal. A knife in the back that had been happening right under my nose while I played the oblivious, dutiful husband. But I wasn't clueless anymore. I knew exactly what was going on, and I knew exactly what I had to do. This wasn't going to end well. Not for Sophia. Not for her little side piece. Because one thing you need to understand about me, I don't let things slide. Never have. Never will. And when it came to revenge, let's just say I'd already started planning before the call even ended. After I hung up with Jake that day, it felt like something inside me snapped. There comes a point in every man's life when he has to make a choice. Fight or fold. I wasn't about to let Sophia walk all over me, then ride off into the sunset with her gym-obsessed boy toy. No, I was taking my life back, and I was going to make damn sure she paid for every lie, every betrayal, and every single time she smiled in my face while messing around with someone else behind my back. The next morning, I called my lawyers. I've been working with them for years. They knew exactly how I operated. "I need you to prepare everything," I told them. "When this divorce happens, Sophia walks away with nothing." And I mean nothing. They didn't need convincing. In fact, they were practically chomping at the bit. One thing about my legal team, they're ruthless. When they go in for the kill, they don't stop until there's nothing left. So the gears were already in motion. Financial assets, properties, bank accounts. Everything people usually think is untouchable when they're living in their cushy little world. I was about to take all of it. Every dollar, every piece of jewelry, every pair of high-end shoes Sophia thought she could flaunt. When the time came, she'd be left with nothing but the clothes on her back. And trust me, that would be the best-case scenario for her. But while all this legal work was in progress, I couldn't stop thinking about him. The other guy, the one who was messing around with my wife. Thanks to Jake and his team, I had all the info I needed. And let me tell you, this wasn't some random hookup she found online. His name was Derek. He was the classic tall, dark, and handsome type. Muscles, tattoos, and a cocky smile that probably worked wonders on desperate housewives. He was a fitness trainer. Of course he was. The guy fit the stereotype to a T. Oh, and the cherry on top? He was married too. Had a little girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old. At first, I couldn't believe it. This guy wasn't just cheating on his wife. He was doing it while pretending to be this wholesome family man. And that made me sick, not just because of what he was doing to his own family, but because of what he represented. The same betrayal, the same lie, just in a different package. I could have let it go. I could have focused all my energy on Sophia and left Derek to deal with his own karma. But that's not how I work. You don't mess with what's mine and walk away unscathed. So I called Jake again and told him to arrange a little meeting with Derek. I didn't need it to be anything too dramatic. No one needed to end up in a hospital, but I wanted Derek to know exactly who he was dealing with. So my team waited, watched him, found the perfect time. Late one night, after he was done training a client, walking to his car alone. It was dark enough for them to stay hidden in the shadows. And my guys? They're good at blending in until the moment they need to make their presence known. When they cornered Derek, he didn't know what hit him. At first, he probably thought it was just a random mugging or a couple of thugs looking for trouble. But then they shoved a phone in his face and asked, "Do you know the woman you've been messing with has a husband?" That's when the reality started to sink in. "What are you talking about?" he stammered, his face going pale as the pieces started to click. His usual swagger? Gone. Replaced by fear. And let me tell you, fear smells sweet when it's coming from a guy who thought he was untouchable. Sophia. Ring a bell? Married to Tyler? One of my guys said. You've been pretty busy with her, haven't you? Derek's face went even paler, and he started tripping over his words, trying to make excuses. But it was all nonsense. I didn't know. It was a mistake, just a bunch of pathetic lies no one was buying. And then came the consequences. I told my guys not to go overboard, but enough to make sure he wouldn't forget that night anytime soon. They made sure he'd remember the name Tyler every time he looked in the mirror, a painful reminder of his mistake. When they were done with him, let's just say Derek had some discomfort that would take him a while to shake off. But that wasn't the end of it. As I said, he had a family, and that meant his actions had consequences beyond just him. A couple of days later, my team visited Derek's house. The picture-perfect suburban home, white picket fence, the whole 9 yards. When his wife answered the door, holding their little girl in her arms, they didn't need to say a word. They simply handed her an envelope filled with photos and videos. Proof of Derek's extracurricular activities with my wife. I wish I could say I felt nothing, that I was numb to it all. But when they told me how her eyes welled up with tears as she flipped through each incriminating image, I did feel a little sorry for her. She didn't deserve this. Neither did their daughter. But at the same time, she deserved to know who she was married to. She deserved to see Derek for the scumbag he really was. A liar. A cheat. A man who destroyed 2 families because he couldn't keep his pants on. And now Sophia would pay the price too. Derek wasn't going to get away with it, but neither would she. My revenge wasn't just about hurting the other man. It was about tearing down the entire castle of lies Sophia had built around herself, brick by brick, until all that was left was rubble. And believe me, there was more to come. I was just getting started. The game was on, and I was going to win. Once my lawyers gave me the green light, that's when I knew it was time to take the gloves off. I wasn't interested in a clean break. I wanted her world to come crashing down so hard that she'd have no choice but to choke on the mess she made. The first thing I did was shut down her life source, the money. All of it. Every card, every account, every penny that had been flowing into her hands for years. I called the bank and had everything in her name frozen, cutting off every access point she had. I wish I could have been there to see her face when she found out. I imagined her doing her usual routine, probably picking out some new wardrobe at one of those high-end boutiques, arms loaded with bags full of overpriced nonsense. She'd go to the register, swipe her card like she always did, and nothing. Declined. Can you imagine it? The confusion on her face, the look she gave the cashier when they kept telling her to try again and again, only for her to realize it wasn't going to work. I swear, I would have paid to see that moment. The realization that her days of endless shopping sprees had come to an end. But that wasn't the only thing I did when I cut her off financially. I made sure she couldn't get to me at all, blocking her from reaching me on my phone, so that no matter how hard she tried, she wouldn't be able to break through. And trust me, I knew she would try. That woman could talk anyone into anything if she thought it would get her what she wanted. So, I made sure there was no way she could sweet-talk her way back into my life. But I didn't stop there. I had security stationed outside our house, the house she used to love showing off. The house she thought would be her forever home. I hired 2 of the toughest, coldest guys I could find and told them to keep an eye on the place, 24/7. If she tried to come back, they were to stop her at the gate, take her things, and hand them over, all packed up in black trash bags. I wasn't about to let her anywhere near my front door again or make any attempt to reach me at work. Not on my watch. I went straight to my office manager and told her, no questions, Sophia was never to be let in again. I made it clear, no one, and I mean no one, was allowed to pass along a message from her. She didn't exist as far as my office was concerned. I knew Sophia probably thought she could show up, put on that distraught wife act, and try to play the victim. But no one was buying it anymore. And honestly, it was almost poetic in a way because with that one action, I took away her ability to come running back to me, begging for another chance, or for more money, or whatever excuse she would have spun. She was on her own, and that's exactly how I wanted it. But things were just getting started. Cutting her off financially, shutting her out of my life, those were just the first steps. What I really wanted was to destroy her reputation. I wanted everyone, friends, family, strangers, everyone, to see her for who she really was. That's where my friend Jake came in. Jake had a contact, let's call him a tech expert. A hacker, but not the kind of guy you see hiding in a basement cracking passwords for fun. This guy was a professional, someone who knew how to make things disappear and appear at will. So, I gave him a simple order. Break into Sophia's social media accounts. All of them, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, you name it. Once he was in, I had him start posting. It all began with the photos. Every sleazy, degrading picture and video Jake's team had gathered of Sophia and Derek in their hotel liaisons went up directly from her accounts, tagging everything for everyone to see. Date nights, hotel meetings, you name it. No one would doubt what she'd been doing behind my back. But I didn't stop at just the photos. I had the guy write captions too. Things like providing services, DM for rates, making it look like she was selling herself to the highest bidder. And once those posts hit the internet, they spread like wildfire. Her phone must have been ringing nonstop with friends asking what was going on, her parents probably losing their minds, and her so-called friends turning on her faster than you can blink. The best part? There was no way for her to deny it. These weren't some anonymous revenge posts. They came directly from her own accounts. Her fingerprints were all over it, and she couldn't do a damn thing to stop it. I bet she was losing it, her whole world crumbling. All that time, she spent curating this perfect image of herself? Gone just like that. Now, don't get me wrong, I won't lie and say there wasn't a moment, just a brief one, when I felt a little bad about how harsh I was being, about how much I was destroying her. But that moment passed because I knew this was the only way to make sure she didn't do it to anyone else. All the things I did, the blocked cards, the public humiliation, the security at the house, that was just the beginning. The real show was yet to come. Because after everything, after her reputation was shredded and all her secrets were out there, there was still one final hurdle she had to face. The trial. And I was going to make sure that it was a show. A battle where there would be no mercy, no second chances. Sophia thought she could live her little fantasy, screw around like there were no consequences. But she forgot one thing. I don't lose. Not in business. Not in life, and certainly not to someone who tried to destroy me. The storm was building, and I could only wonder what her next move would be. Whatever it was, it wouldn't matter. The pieces were already in place, and there was no turning back. The court date came quicker than I thought. And when I say it went quickly, I mean it like ripping off a Band-Aid. Except this Band-Aid had been festering for years. Sophia probably thought she had a shot. She probably convinced herself the judge would have some sympathy, or that she could talk her way into some kind of settlement. But the evidence? The testimonies? The mountain of proof against her? It was so solid that her lawyer might as well have packed up before we even started. She never stood a chance. To be honest, I couldn't even be bothered to show up to every hearing. I didn't want to see her. I didn't want to hear that voice. The same voice that once told me she loved me, but now sounded more like a vulture circling over a carcass. I kept my distance because seeing her would only make me angrier, and I didn't need that. The law was on my side. My lawyers tore her apart, and each day brought her closer to leaving the courtroom with nothing but the clothes on her back. But there was this one day, one hearing when she managed to catch me alone. The judge had just wrapped up the session, and I was heading out, finally feeling like I could breathe again. Sophia must have been waiting for me, lying in wait like a spider, hoping for one last chance to spin her web. And as soon as she saw me, she lunged. "Tyler, please," she called out, rushing toward me as if nothing had changed, like we were still together. Like she could just walk back into my life and erase all the damage. She grabbed my arm, her face flushed, eyes red and puffy from crying. "Just hear me out, Tyler," she begged, her voice shaking. "I'm sorry. I made a mistake." "A mistake?" I spat, yanking my arm away from her grasp. "You call months of sneaking around with another man a mistake?" She shook her head, tears streaming down her face, and her voice grew louder, not caring who was watching us in the hallway. "I didn't know what I was doing," she pleaded. "I was confused. I was lonely, confused." I cut her off mid-sentence. "You were sleeping with a married guy and had the nerve to tell me I needed to fix my cucumber? No, that's not confusion. That's calculated. You knew exactly what you were doing." By then, she was losing it, her face a mess of smeared mascara and regret. She dropped to her knees in front of me, right there in the courthouse. It looked like something straight out of a bad soap opera. "Please, Tyler," she sobbed. "Please don't do this. I can't live without you. I'll do anything. I swear I'll make it right." I didn't even blink. The woman I once thought I knew was long gone, if she'd ever existed at all. The person kneeling in front of me wasn't my wife. She was a stranger now, someone who meant absolutely nothing to me. And it was crystal clear to me that this wasn't about love or regret. It wasn't some heartfelt apology she was offering. No, this was about power, about trying to salvage whatever she could for herself. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was just scared of losing everything. I leaned down, close enough that only she could hear me, and said, "You're nothing to me. Nothing. Yesterday, I had a great time with a couple of girls. And you know what? Not one of them cared about the size of my cucumber. They loved it. The change in her was instant. The pleading turned to fury, and the desperation in her eyes twisted into something venomous. She stood up, trembling, shaking with rage. The realization hit her like a slap. She wasn't going to get anything from me. She was going to leave with nothing. "You're a bastard, Tyler," she screamed, her voice echoing off the walls. "A cold-hearted, selfish asshole." I didn't flinch. I didn't even look back as she kept hurling insults at me, trying to provoke some kind of reaction. Maybe that's what she wanted, just a little bit of my attention, even if it was anger. But I was done with her. Done with the lies, the manipulation, the fake tears. When I reached the door, I turned around, locked eyes with her for one last time, and raised my middle finger, high and proud. Then, I walked out, leaving her standing there, alone in the middle of her mess, just as empty as she felt. The door slammed shut behind me, and for the first time in years, I felt free. The trial was over, but my real life was just beginning. Once Sophia was officially out of my life, I did what any man would do after escaping a toxic marriage. I started living. No more dragging around dead weight. No more feeling like I was locked up in a prison that I had built myself. I was free, and the world felt wide open. The first thing I did was hire top talent to take my place at work. Why waste my time buried in spreadsheets when I could be out there living life to the fullest? I promoted my best people, trusted them to take over the daily grind, and let the company practically run itself. Sure, I kept an eye on things. After all, it was still my baby, but I was finally able to step away from the desk. I packed my bags and hit the road, checking off places on my bucket list. Beaches in the Caribbean, vineyards in Tuscany, neon lights in Tokyo, and mornings waking up to the ocean breeze in Bali. And no, it wasn't about filling a void anymore. It was about rediscovering joy, laughing, dancing, enjoying the simple pleasures without caring about the past. Each adventure was another step away from the nightmare Sophia had put me through, and each new experience was a reminder of the life I had always deserved. While my life was on the up, Sophia's was crashing down. News about her spread like wildfire. Word travels fast when someone falls from grace, and Sophia, once the queen of the social scene, was now a pariah. Most of her friends cut ties, whether out of disgust from the scandal or because they realized she was toxic. All those rich girl habits she had, yeah, those didn't go away. But her cash flow did. And she quickly found herself scrambling to figure out how to fix the mess she'd made. Of course, she didn't stop there. I heard she was trying to hook up with a wealthy businessman. I knew the guy. He ran in the same circles as me, successful, a real estate investor. The kind of guy Sophia would have loved when we were together. But people talk, and he knew all about her. The affair, the drama, the mess. So, when she came around, batting her eyelashes, trying to play her old game, he shut her down without hesitation. "Get lost," he told her. "You're bad news, and I don't need your trouble." Brutal, but she deserved it. No one wanted to deal with a woman whose life was a walking scandal. As for Derek, her fitness trainer, well, he didn't fare much better. His wife wasted no time kicking him to the curb. The second my team handed her the proof, Derek probably thought she'd cry and beg. But she didn't. She filed for divorce right then and there. And I wasn't done with Derek yet. He relied on his reputation, which in his line of work was everything. So I made sure to make a few calls. One to the gym owner, a couple to his major clients. I told them exactly what kind of man Derek was. How he preyed on married women and ruined his own family. In this business, image is everything, and Derek's was shot. By the end of the week, he was out of a job, out of a marriage, and probably out of hope. Some people might say I went too far. Maybe you're thinking, "Tyler, why all the trouble? Why not just walk away and let karma take care of it?" Sure, maybe that's what a better man would have done. But I'm not a saint. I wasn't about to let them walk away unscathed. They played dirty, and I made sure they saw how deep the dirt could go. Now here I am, sitting on a beach with a cold drink in my hand, watching the ocean waves, and for the first time in a long time, my life is truly mine. No more dead weight, no more lies. Just me, my freedom, and the world to explore. And in a twisted way, I have Sophia to thank for this new beginning. If she hadn't blown everything up, I'd still be trapped in that miserable marriage, pretending everything was fine. So, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have let them get away with it? Or would you have made sure they paid the price like I did? Thanks for listening, Reddit. Here's to new beginnings, to living life without regrets, and to making sure that when people try to screw you over, you always come out on top. Cheers! Stay strong.